Hey bestie, it's time for your next session of Real Talk Friend Therapy with your favorite big sister auntie queen, Daysha Veronica. Hey y'all, welcome back. I hope you're surviving and thriving during these crazy ass times we're living through. I know every day there's another stressful or depressing headline out there, but that's why I think it's so important now more than ever to be investing in and nurturing our friendships and support systems. Because let me tell you, the only way out of all this crazy shit is through it. Look at me. Wait, that rhymed. Now I can't even remember the rhyme. Oh my gosh. The only way through all this crazy bullshit is through it, okay? And so I know for me, having friends that I can lean on about all this bullshit, it just makes it so much more bearable. I do not know where I would be in life without the constant stream of TikToks that Becky and I send between one another. Wait, have y'all heard the hostile government takeover song? Because if not, I need you to stop what you are doing. Stop listening to me, okay? Go to the show notes. I'm gonna drop a link. Let me tell you, the revolution will not be televised. It will be EDMified, okay? Like, I cannot get this song out of my head. And I was texting Becky and our friend Amy the other day that I truly hope that Kamala is blasting this song in the shower. I hope she is bumping to it in the kitchen when she's cooking with Dougie. I hope it's her ringtone. Cause man, are we truly in a Nigerian prince scam right now? Like, so good. So good. Anyway. I guess that kind of segues into our topic for today, which is all about exploring the impact that it has on us, or at least the perception of us, if we don't have any friends of our race. Becky and I lightly touched on this in our interracial friendships episode, but ever since I moved out of LA and then, the pandemic hit and kind of forced a lot of people to change their living situations, she and Amy, who are two white women, they are the only two people that I see most regularly. And while Becky is, she's entangled, figuring her life out with a brown guy, clearly, y'all see that that's complicated. And so, when we hang out with our partners, I am usually the only Black person or person of color in the space because Amy's partner is white. My partner is also white, but I will say he's white with a question mark. Like, I can't tell you how many times people have thought that he is Mexican. Like, through the entire 8-year run of our relationship. I'm talking like security guards at BuzzFeed, people's parents. Like, okay, funny side story. So before Becky was in her entanglement with this brown guy, she was dating a white guy. And she was having an issue at her apartment, but the maintenance man didn't speak great English. So her ex goes, well, why don't you just have Daysha's boyfriend come and talk to him? And Becky's like, for what? And he's like, well, isn't he? And Becky's like, isn't he white? Because he's definitely white. So all of that is to say that we still need to do a 23andMe on that one. But regardless, I find myself in the close company of a lot of white people. And if you've listened to prior episodes, then you know that my relationship to my racial identity it's been a rocky one and a confusing one, but one that I have ultimately come to love and embrace. I fucking love being a Black woman, and particularly a Black American woman, because even though my family is from Nigeria and Barbados originally, bitch, I was born here, okay? I was raised here. And so I am so unbelievably proud to be a Black American. I am so proud of our history of perseverance and resilience in this country. Some people know this, but others might not. It's kind of something that I feel like has been simmering under the surface for years, but like it's now kind of starting to rise to the surface. But Black Americans are probably the most shit on group by not even just other outside groups, but like also among those in the Black diaspora as well. Africans, Caribbeans, everybody outside of Black America, they always have opinions on why Black Americans aren't prosperous and how they are trashy and ghetto and angry and all of this mess. So, I just want to make it clear that even though I know where my roots are, I love being Black and I love being Black American. Any major research project I did throughout my time in school was always centered on Black American culture. In boarding school and college and during my time at BuzzFeed, I made it a mission to be part of groups and to be on the leadership team of organizations that supported Black students and people. Shit, my first college campus job was at the Office of Black Student Affairs. But even with saying all of that, I'm not going to act like the love for my culture and my people and myself was instantaneous. When I was in high school, I got to be part of, no, was it high school? Yeah, okay, sorry. I'm like having a brain fart. Yes, it was towards the end of my time in high school. I got to be part of this theater program over the summer where we basically wrote our own play. And I don't remember why I wrote this monologue. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, y'all. I keep forgetting when I be recording, I don't be putting shit on Do Not Disturb. I'm like, why are people messaging me right now? Un minuto. All right, bet. Okay, so I was in this program over the summer. It was a theater program. We wrote our own play. And I don't remember why I wrote this monologue, but basically it was a monologue about how when I was little, my mom caught me not playing with my Black Barbie dolls. And not only was I not playing with them, but I was hiding them in the corners like I didn't want them to exist. And so my mom asked me one day why I'm not playing with my Black dolls. And it's crazy. I have to ask her how much she remembers this. But it's crazy because I don't remember much about my childhood. But I remember that moment very saliently. And, my mom didn't shame me for not playing with them. But I remember feeling like, oh shit, did I do a bad thing? Like, am I doing a bad thing? Even though I couldn't fully understand myself why I wasn't playing with them. But now as an adult, now I have the words and I have the understanding. It was purely and plainly because of anti-Blackness. Because even though I didn't understand what all of that meant at the time, I knew, I picked up on, I absorbed through what I saw in life and on TV and wherever else that people did not like Blackness. And so I was obviously like, okay, well then neither should I. And so I had a really hard time growing up with the fact that, I didn't have straight hair that fell down my back the way that my Puerto Rican best friend did. So let me tell you, because my best friend's long ass hair, she had long hair to her butt. It must have been like 2A, 2B, wavy hair. That hair had me in a chokehold, y'all. Chokehold. And, I feel so bad because it's not like I didn't have beautiful hair. I had gorgeous, thick hair that people would sell their firstborn over. You know what I'm saying? But it just didn't fall down my back like, straight, I don't want to say white hair, because obviously people of different ethnic groups can have that type of hair. But like, for lack of a better word, because I can't think right now, like I just wanted that like real straight white hair, but I had beautiful hair and I hate that I ruined it because I begged, like would not get off my mom's neck about wanting to get my hair straightened. And she kept telling me, she was just like, girl, you don't want to do it. Don't do it. So to appease me, when I was younger, we would sit in the kitchen with the hot comb on the stove and, she would straighten it. But even for me, it wasn't enough because, like my hair would be straight for like 2 seconds, right? As we all know, and then start sweating, it would puff up. But even when it was straight for those 2 seconds, it still didn't fall the same way. And that just, man, y'all, that moment, yeah, like I said, her hair had me in a chokehold. And it just really frustrated me that my hair didn't fall down my back the way that my best friend's hair did. Or, I really struggled with the fact that my mom was initially going to name me Ashley, but she went with my very unique name instead. And it's so funny because now I'm like, good Lord, thank God. And so I say that with so my Puerto Rican best friend's name is Ashley, and I love that for her. I do. I'm so happy now for myself. So I'm like, I don't want to shit on Ashley's, but like, I am now very proud and happy with my unique name. But when I was younger, I was like, oh my God, why didn't you name me Ashley? And then on top of that, I had a hella long African ass last name that people fought for their lives to pronounce correctly. Like, honestly, they would just like give up in the middle of saying it. Like, it's just, oh my God. And then on top of that, even though I am Black American, you know, my grandparents immigrated here. My dad immigrated here. So culturally, the foods that I was exposed to or the experiences that I had at home, they were not like most Black American kids. It's actually funny to me when I think about rice, for instance, because it wasn't until I was an adult that I learned that jollof rice was like what you called that kind of rice, because that is not what we called it in my house, okay? Like in my house, it was, do you want rice or do you want white rice? You know, like white rice was not my standard. It was not my default, okay? White rice was the other in my house. It was the outlier. So even though I took a lot of pride in Black culture, like I was obsessed with Madam C.J. Walker as a kid. I mean, I guess that should have been a sign that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, because Madam C.J. Walker just spoke so deeply to my spirit. But I also struggled with a lot of ingrained anti-Blackness. I struggled with kids telling me that I wasn't Black enough, or that I didn't talk like a Black person, or that I should know when to turn the white talk off. Like, oh my God. Okay, so I remember maybe in middle school or early high school, somewhere around like anywhere between like 13 to 15, maybe like 13. Yeah, I think it was 13. I went to a cookout and one of my mom's friends, she was talking to me. I don't remember what we were talking about. But halfway through the conversation, she was just like, you know, it's okay for you to turn the white girl off when you're with your people. And Lord, I just remember being so hurt and so confused because, y'all, I was not actively trying to be a white girl. Like, yeah, I was obsessed with having straight hair, but I've honestly never in my life wanted to be white. If anything, I think I wanted to be more light skinned, but I have never wanted to be a Britney Spears, okay? Like, I loved her, don't get me wrong. Britney was that girl growing up. And, you know, I think I wanted to be skinny like her. But again, I don't think I ever, and I know it feels weird having said all the shit I said and then saying this, but I don't think I ever hated being Black. Like, yes, I didn't find my Blackness attractive, my Black features attractive, but there has never been a point in my life where I was like, oh man, like I was born the wrong skin color. Like, I wish I was a white girl. I wish I was born white. Like, I have never felt that way. I've had all kinds of issues with my Blackness, but I have never once wished that. Okay. And so, as I mentioned before, I'm a very consistent person. Okay. What I do in front of Black people is what I do in front of white people. And so what I really struggle with is that I have never been doing anything different, but any space that I have gone into, whether it was a predominantly Black space or a predominantly white space, I always got words about my identity and who I was. And I would get all of this feedback while also trying to understand and dismantle my own ingrained anti-Blackness. So I say all this to say that as far as making friends throughout my life and thinking about their race, and what that would mean, what that would say to others about me, I don't think race was ever a factor to me, except for when I went to boarding school and when I worked at BuzzFeed. I grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and even though it's got a lot of tech money and biotech money running through it now, when I was growing up, there were actually a lot of diverse families living there. And I'm not even using that as like a code word for Black, because y'all know me, I would just say Black. I mean, truly, Cambridge was a melting pot. Like I said, one of my childhood best friends was Puerto Rican, and the other one had immigrated from Ethiopia in 5th grade. And we had people from DR, we had people from Brazil, we had a lot of people from the Caribbean islands. I mean, white people were the minority in my school. For a long time, we had 2 white girls in my grade, and then in 6th grade, I think we got another. And then in 8th grade, we got another. And we had no white boys. I did not know any white boys. And then in the grade above me, there was like one token white boy. That was it. And funny enough, I was actually good friends with the white girls. But I also had my Puerto Rican and my Ethiopian best friends. I had black friends. I think the only group of friends I didn't have were Asians. And that's just because they weren't around. We had one Asian kid in 3rd or 4th grade, and then he left, and that was it. Anyway, all of this is to say that I had a very diverse group of friends growing up. But I also think that because I was good friends with the white girls and I was a nerd who did well in school and I started getting into music outside of hip hop and rap. Also, sidebar, if you were listening to the interracial friendships episode, I was telling Becky the other day, I went back to those Hillary Duff albums and I'm telling y'all, bangers. Like, I don't think Hillary got her shine the way that she should have because... obsessed. Anyway, it played into that belief that I wanted to be a white girl. Even though I'm telling you, I spoke to these white girls. Oh man, sorry. I took Harlow for a walk in between this, so I took my phone off of Do Not Disturb. I am the worst. Okay. So I spoke to these white girls like regular smuggler people. I did not turn on a quote unquote white girl voice when I was with them. I treated them and spoke to them like anyone else I knew. Oh my God, I'm going to tell you guys a story, but like, don't judge me because I didn't. Let me just tell you the story and then I'll give you the caveat. So one day, and I couldn't even tell you why, but one of the white girls that I was friends with, she was pissing me off, and we were out at the mall, and I turned to her in public and said, girl, I will slap you right now if you don't stop playing. And again, I don't remember the context. I don't remember what was happening right up to that moment, but I do remember it because I guess I said it loud enough to where everyone in the store turned their head at us and was like, what the fuck is going on? And, you know, nothing happened. I did not slap her. I was saying it in the like, bitch, if you don't like shut your ass up. Like, it was just like, I can't tell you. I wish I could remember what had happened for me to say that. But no, I did not slap her, but I did say that shit to her face. So yeah, I don't code switch. Like, at least amongst my friends. I might code switch at work, but I say might because I work in entertainment, which is really different from most work environments. But I just don't code switch with friends. And this is not to say that there is anything wrong with code switching. I 1,000% understand why people do it. I just personally don't feel like doing it with people who are supposed to be my friends because I feel like I shouldn't have to put on a mask with people who I consider ring 1 or ring 2 type friends. And if you're new here and you're like, what do you mean ring 1, ring 2? Please make sure that you listen to episode 3. It's called What is Friendship? And it will give you all of that context. But yeah, personally, I set a boundary, or not really a boundary, a life standard. I unconsciously just set a life standard for myself early on that I was not going to code switch for people that were supposed to be my friends. So if I'm ever code switching with you, then we are not friends, okay? Anyway, I went from this really diverse community where my blackness got called into question a lot to then going to this predominantly white boarding school where the white girls were nothing like the white girls I grew up with. But even in the face of all of that, it's funny. I still didn't code switch. But I will say it was still a very intimidating environment. And if you listen to episode 13, which is where I interview my best friend about the beginnings of our friendship there, we were 2 of 4 black kids in my grade. So best believe when I saw her across the field on our like orientation day, I said, that's it. That's my best friend. Okay. Because I was in such steep culture shock. And, lucky for us that we actually turned out to be great friends, even though I basically like racially profiled her and sought her out solely because she was Black. Because as y'all know, we are not a monolith. Just because she was Black did not mean that we'd have anything in common or that we'd be compatible as friends. And it's ultimately why, in theory, when I think about the title of this episode, I want to say that it should not matter whether or not you have friends of your race. While race is connected to culture, especially in this country, race at its most basic is just phenotype. It cannot and should not be used as a substitute for compatibility or cultural connectedness. And yes, there are experiences in this country that will have an impact on us as a people collectively, but it does not mean that we process them or even have a relationship to them in the same way. So again, theoretically, I want to say that it does not matter or it should not matter. But then at the same time, I'm like, but it does though. Because, and maybe there's just something I knew intrinsically about her, but I'm not sure I would have been the same Black girl in that predominantly white space without her. I do not think that I would have been as bold or assertive in my Blackness or taking up space like I did without her. And it also took me time. When I first got there, I was actually the shy, quiet girl in the corner, but I primarily hung out with the Black and brown kids, and that's where I felt like I really became myself. And then throughout the years, I really blossomed, right? But yeah, so my boyfriend and I, we have basically created our own version of couples therapy since I lost my insurance and we couldn't afford to go. And so sometimes we read books together and we discuss them. So we're reading a book right now about attachment theory. And in it, they talk about this phenomenon known as the dependency paradox, which is basically that if you want to make someone more independent, you actually have to bring them in and remind them that they have your support, rather than what feels more right to a lot of people, which is to push them away and not, quote unquote, coddle them. And they actually did this really interesting study with babies, where there's a mom, her baby, and a researcher in a room together with like copious amounts of toys, just mountains of toys. And at first, the baby is in heaven and it's just going around and it's touching and it's exploring and it's playing. And then at some point in the experiment, the mom leaves the room and immediately, for most babies, the baby would stop exploring, be like, where the fuck is my mom? And then start crying and just be in complete distress. And it would want nothing to do with the toys. But then when the mom would re-enter the room and comfort the baby, it's like the baby would black out all of that. And it was like nothing happened. And they would go back to exploring and playing and doing their thing. So what they surmised from this research is that when we are able to get love and reassurance from our loved ones in our times of need, instead of coldness and rejection, it actually makes us more independent and more likely to explore without them. So I say all that to say that Dee was that reassurance for me. She was that little hand squeeze for me, okay? Our friendship really gave me the confidence to be myself, even though I went through a lot of hostile and microaggressive interactions with people in that space. Because there is just something so darkly unifying about us facing racism together that, don't get me wrong, is hella unfortunate, but I also think it does play a huge role in our bond and why we were able to get to a place of vulnerability a lot sooner with each other. Shit, let me tell y'all. Okay, I got stories for y'all today. This is the story episode, okay? I remember this is my freshman year and I'm the shy, quiet girl, at least in classes, right? But when I was with the Black and brown kids, I was myself, and we were loud, and there was a computer lab that we loved to, it was like a computer lab off into the corner. There was like a main lab, and then there was this side computer lab, which was known as the language lab. But a lot of people loved to be in there because it was a small room, it was quiet. And so like that was the spot where me and my Black and brown friends would hang out, we'd get rowdy, whoop-de-whoop. And of course there was a hallway between the main lab and this language lab. So sometimes we would be loud and rowdy in the hallway. And I just remember this white boy came out and was just like, shut the fuck up. And I turned to him. It was like, let me tell, like, y'all, again, it's like I have two sides in me where it's like, again, I'm this like quiet, unassuming person. And then it's like the lion just pops out. And so he said that shit and I did not skip a beat. I was like, no, you shut the fuck up, okay? Like, and he looked at us like, what? And I was just like, hell yeah, I don't give a fuck. Let me tell you, because my mom was talking to me the other day, and I've always wondered, like, where I got this from, and then she was talking, and I was like, oh, yeah, obviously this is where I get it from. Because she was just like, there's a lot you can do, but you cannot disrespect me. And I am exactly the same way. I am like, if he had just come up to us and been like, hey, like, can y'all keep it down? You're a little loud. Be like, oh, bet, I'm sorry. No mess, no stress. Like, we were not... But yeah, he said, shut the fuck up. I said, no, you shut the fuck up. Oh my gosh. I can't. Anyway, so I was starting to talk about this in the interracial friendships episode, but I got sidetracked. I was like editing it and I was like, oh bitch, you didn't finish your sentence there. But anyway, even though I went through a lot of microaggressive and honestly just straight up aggressive bullshit there, I don't think it impacted me as deeply as I know it impacted others, as you can tell from that story. But I was I was student body president my senior year, and my vice president was my best friend, but she was a white woman. And, you either loved us or you hated us because we were such happy-go-lucky kids who just really wanted to make a change in our community. And, we just had a lot of energy. And like I said, people either loved us or they hated us. Anyway, someone put these like anonymous, almost like ransom note style letters in our mailboxes complaining about our leadership and, just a lot of mess. And I want to make it clear, I don't call it mess because I think that I'm above criticism or that I was some amazing leader, because truly, I think that constructive criticism makes you a better leader. I call it mess because it was just like, you send me this like 20-page letter, don't sign it. Like, why won't you say this to my face? Say it to my face. If you really want me to hear you and to take these grievances seriously, let me see you, okay? Because again, I'm not mean, I'm just straight up. But I also know that my straight upness, especially as a Black woman, can be interpreted as mean, or the popular word, intimidating, right? So anyway, I knew from day one, I knew who it was. I knew it in my gut. I told my friend it's this white guy, not the one that I had cussed out, because this was a couple years later, but I was like, it's this white guy. I know in my gut it's this particular white guy. And my friend is just like, no, really? You think so? Like, how do you know? And I'm just like, girl, I just know. And sure enough, on graduation day, he told her it was him. And I think back to that moment specifically because I think any other Black person, and rightfully so, would have been terrified to receive a note like that in this predominantly white environment that I also mentioned, again, like my freshman year, someone wrote, I wish all niggers would die on the wall. So, to have something like that happen, I could totally see it contributing to a sense of otherness and not belonging. And I'm sure that they would have recounted later on in life that this moment was a real threat to their right to exist on campus. Okay? But I don't know, y'all. Or maybe I do. But the only thoughts going through my mind when I got that letter, letters, because homeboy wrote 2 long-ass, messy-ass letters. But the only thing that was going on in my mind was, say it to my motherfucking face. Say it to my face. Because really, where was the harm in this white man in a predominantly white space bringing up his concerns to one of 3 Black kids now, because one dropped out? But tell me, where was the danger? Where was it? Because there was none. He was gonna be fine. But the Black person on the receiving end of an anonymous terrorist-style letter in a predominantly white space, like, that sounded like that was the move. I mean, he could have done this with an administrator. He could have had a teacher sit down with us. I would have been more than happy. Listen, people Be like, I can't tell you how many times people have been like, well, now, like, when I have conversations with you, I want to make sure I have someone else present. Bet. Do it. Please. Because you are the one that be a mess, okay? You are the one that's going to recount and say, oh, they were being hostile. Blah, 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 blah. Like, no. So if you ever want to have a conversation with me and a third party, please do it, okay? I would not have been against that. But he chose to do it this way because the point of this letter was not getting his grievances met. It was to instill fear in me. And I said, fuck that. Y'all, I swear, I don't even think I reported it. I think one of the letters I threw away, and then I know I taped another letter to a binder and wrote, like, want, like, say it to my face on it. But yeah, I think my relationship with Dee, while it started from a very surface level place with me solely wanting to connect with her because of our race, and again, I talk about this in our episode, how she opened my eyes to the fact that Black people, like, again, intrinsically have always known that Black people are not a monolith, but like Dee just really brought it home for me that we are not a monolith and that it was okay for me to be whatever kind of Black girl I wanted to be, that I should be comfortable in that and proud in that. And so if I wanted to be a Black girl that had white friends or Latino friends or Asian friends, then that was okay because who I was friends with had nothing to do with me being a quote unquote real Black girl. And it's funny because at the same time of our friendship, I was, let's see, okay, how do I phrase this? I was in community with, because this person later told me that we were not friends. And you know what? She wasn't wrong. She really wasn't wrong. So, I was in community with this Latina girl who very much policed my Blackness and very much called me out for all the ways in which I was changing like it was a bad thing. And again, I was changing not because I had any shame in my Blackness, but just because I'm a person and I evolve and I was finding myself. So I remember one day she drew a picture of me from what that evolution looked like. So the picture was me my freshman year wearing Jordans and sweatpants and, maybe my head wrap, because listen, your girl, I was quiet, but that was where my Leo was coming out, because I'd be all around these rich white kids wearing my fake Louis Vuitton headscarf, not giving one flying fuck. So, again, Jordan, sweatpants, my head wrap. And then by my senior year, I had now, she drew me as the girl that was wearing leggings with big sweaters and ballet flats and scarves. And again, trying to paint it as like me morphing into a white girl. So it was interesting when I think about it to have someone of my race encouraging me to be whatever I wanted to be and reminding me that whatever choices I make in life should have nothing to do with my Blackness. And then someone outside of my race very much fear-mongering me into being a trope of my race. So anyway, in high school, while I started out only hanging with the Black and brown kids, by senior year, I had friends like across the spectrum, including international kids. We had a big Korean presence at my school, so I got to have some Korean friends. And so by the time I got to college, I can't tell. It is so funny to me how comfortable I was with the idea of having white friends, because I knew I was going to a PWI. And if you don't know what that means, it's a predominantly white institution. And I felt like I did a lot of work on myself in high school, so I knew how to be myself while also navigating these white spaces. And I'm telling you, I don't think I had one close white friend in college. And it actually didn't hit me until one of my white friends in high school called it out to me. She was like, do you have any white friends out there? Because when I look at the photos that you post on Facebook, I never see any white people. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that. And then, not like I should have either, I know there are a lot of white people out there who don't even think twice, don't even blink twice about not having BIPOC friends. But I did think it was interesting, both her calling it out and then it naturally happening within this very white environment. I'm telling you, I did not say to myself, I will not have any white friends. It just it just didn't materialize. And what's even funnier is that, maybe funny is not the right word, but like what's even more interesting is that I actually think I went through more microaggressions and racialized incidents in high school than I did in college. But yeah, I don't know. Again, I was friendly. We would say hi and bye. But I did not build a close relationship with a white person from college until after graduation. She and I were the only few who chose to live in LA after graduation. So we would hang out and I'd take her to all the BuzzFeed parties. And now we're great friends. And I will definitely have to have her on the podcast in the future. But yeah, I did not have white friends in college. So then, by the time I got to BuzzFeed, which was my first job out of college, I feel like my attitude when it came to making friends was, again, that I'm just gonna vibe with whoever I vibe with. And if that happens to be BIPOC people, then so be it. But if it was white people, that's cool too. But in reality, because I was an intern at the start of what most would consider BuzzFeed Video's golden era, which was around 2014, I actually didn't have many options because while I wasn't the first Black person at BuzzFeed Video, I was the first Black person to make it from the internship to the fellowship to the full-time role. Because when I got there, that was something, like, I think I was like technically the first official class to make it through. So a lot of my coworkers who later became my friends, we were actually a pretty diverse group, but a lot of the time, I was the only Black person when we went out to lunch. Or if BuzzFeed was having an after-work event, at first, I was one of very few Black people who hung out at those events. But then, by the end of 2014, we definitely had an increase, not a lot, but an increase in BIPOC people in the office. And that's actually what kicked off my friendship with Becky, which is detailed in episode 4, if you want to listen to that. But when I first started, she was basically like literally the first words out of her mouth to me were like, don't let these white people use you as a token in their videos and then distract you from getting your own work done. Because essentially there had been a Black guy there before me who didn't advance to the fellowship because he was basically in a bunch of videos for people, but it didn't leave him enough time in the day to get his own shit done. And I guess that was something that he was penalized for. It was like nobody thought for a second, like, if we're always pulling this Black guy into videos, when does he get to do his stuff, right? But what's in the past is in the past. So during those early years at BuzzFeed, I eventually did become friends with some of my Black coworkers, but most of my closest friends there, and I want to emphasize there, not in life, but just in this one specific environment, and this specificity will become relevant soon enough, but my closest friends there were not Black. And again, I didn't really think it mattered much or that it should speak to who I am as a Black person or my love of my culture. And yet for some Black people who worked there in high places, it was. And to them, it didn't make my Black opinion meaningful or it made me a quote unquote free Black. Yeah. Y'all, I can't even begin to explain how hostile it was to be a Black creative at BuzzFeed. But let me tell you, it was not the white people making it hostile. It was the Black people belittling and chastising other Black people's experiences. And weirdly enough, this tension also became an East Coast Black versus a West Coast Black thing. But what was so fucking dumb about all these assumptions was that, and I will also say that a lot of the tension was East Coast not liking West Coast, okay? West Coast people had absolutely no problem. And it's much more complicated. I'm simplifying, but also trying to add, because I want you to get the full picture, but it was just such a complicated thing. It honestly might need its own episode. But, not only was the tension, I feel like, coming largely from East Coast to West Coast, but I also know that there was a big tension, and this was just across racial groups as well, that So East Coast was the publishing office, West Coast was the video office. And there was an underlying tension in the background for, I think, just a lot of people who worked on the East Coast, because we were making viral videos off of their posts. And so they felt like it was unfair that, they were doing a lot of what they considered the brain work. They did all the writing. And then we were basically profiting and getting famous off of their posts, which is so, it's just so not true. And I'm like, while their posts were the inspiration, we certainly put in, we did not just copy these posts verbatim. Okay. So again, that's another conversation for another day. So there was that tension just across the company. But then also on top of that, I felt like the East Coast Black people thought that we were not Black enough on the West Coast. But what was so dumb is that most of the Black people that worked for video, they were from the fucking East Coast. They were born and raised in the fucking East Coast. So this, you California Blacks are, y'all are real free and different over there bullshit was just rooted in nothing, because again, most of us were born and raised on the East Coast. So just wild shit. Wild shit. The trauma that I experienced there has taken me years and will continue to take me years to unpack in therapy. I know that there are probably things that are still lingering that I still need to work through. Because again, I'm not afraid, and I've never been afraid to acknowledge my own complicated relationship with my Blackness. But man, it just felt like I had this scarlet bee on my chest that signified to some Black people in the company that I was a Black person who didn't have a lot of Black friends, and because of that, I was the wrong kind of Black, and that if I wanted to create Black content, it needed to be cross-verified by the right kind of Blacks. Oh my gosh, what did this stupid bitch say to me? She said that she had a verified Black card on the internet or some shit like that, and that's tip of the iceberg bullshit. And so part of what inspired me wanting to do this episode was how heavily policed I felt in my Black identity at BuzzFeed, and how I felt like who I was friends with was being weaponized against me as being representative of my commitment to my culture. And honestly, it's not the first time I've seen this comment being made. I feel like I constantly see this insult hurled at Black people who, they maybe aren't the picture when you think of what a Black American person looks like. And that is just I'm like, ugh, I even hate to say that, but what I think is so fucked about it is that there are so many Black kids who did not have a choice in where they were raised, who also might have been raised by someone who was Black but struggled with their ingrained anti-Blackness and thought that they were doing right by their kids by shielding them from Black culture and Black people. And I know people like that. So yeah, they didn't have Black friends growing up, but why does that have to make them any less Black? Why does that have to mean that their Black experience is somehow invalidated because of who they had access to? Because here's the real talk. There are some Black folks that are happy with the fact that they didn't grow up around other Black people. It's a reality that some people love being tokens, okay? Being that special little Black unicorn in their community. But I definitely feel like that number is so much lower than people make it out to be. And that in actuality, these people are aware of the fact that they don't have Black friends, but also don't just want to seek out Black people for the sake of saying that they have Black friends. Which is why, again, I say in theory that it should not matter if you don't have friends of your race. And yet it does, and poignantly so, for Black people in this country. And I just wish that we would stop trying to find the smallest, pettiest reasons to divide ourselves. The division in the Black community at BuzzFeed during my time there was unlike anything I have ever experienced, and honestly never want to experience again. The way that certain Black people acted like they were the gate people to the Black experience and only they knew the right way to be Black. I mean, it was demeaning, demoralizing, traumatizing. Prior to BuzzFeed, as I mentioned, I was always engaged in Black spaces wherever I was at. I took so much pride in being in those Black spaces and contributing and uplifting, right? Like I was on leadership for the Black student groups in high school and in college. But after what I went through at BuzzFeed, like, I'm not gonna lie, I have checked out. When I went to grad school, it was actually the first time in my life that I wanted no part of being part of a Black community. I just went to school and I went home. I wrote my plays and I kept to myself. Okay, well, all right. As I'm thinking about this, in reality, I guess it's not that I completely disengaged from being in Black spaces, but rather I think that grad school made me realize that I'm gonna have to create the Black spaces that I want to be a part of. And I saw that through my art and my plays, because my plays unapologetically, okay, center the Black experience and the Black female experience. And a lot of my plays also had big casts. So when I would workshop them, oftentimes I would get Black directors, I'd get Black crew members, and it actually made me realize how much I loved being a writer and specifically a playwright, and how I was not only creating jobs and opportunities for Black people with my work, but I was also creating an environment, you know, a healthy and safe environment for us to really dissect and explore our Blackness without judgment. So yeah, when I left BuzzFeed, I remember seeing comments from people being like, oh, you know, why isn't she going to work at this Black publication or at this Black website? And to be honest, I don't know if I could ever work for a Black media company, or, you know, I don't know how excited I would be to join a Black employee resources group again. I mean, unless I feel like I had say in shaping the culture, or I felt that from the people who are currently shaping the culture, that there was a real sense of safety and not division and belittling, I'm just too old. And that's the other thing that's crazy to me, right? Is that I also think back to the fact that, again, BuzzFeed was my first job out of college, right? So I was like 21, 22, and I left by 25. So, and I was we didn't have necessarily a Black employee resources group. We had it was called like Race Feed or whatever. And so I was the head of that. And so this is all from 21 to 25. And I just think about the people who were bullying me and belittling me. And I'm like, these people were the age that I am now. They were like early 30s, mid 30s. These people at these grown big ass ages being so fucking divisive and just fucking, it is just crazy to me. It is crazy to me that these people at their big ages were so trash. Because here's the thing. I've talked about the shenanigans white people have put me through. And it's not right. It's not right at all. But it's also not new to me. It does not shock me. You know, it goes back to, if you have not listened to the interracial friendships episode, I told Becky how when I was at boarding school, the greatest piece of, it wasn't advice, it was like knowledge or wisdom that was bestowed upon me by another alumni of color who was like much older than me and came back to talk to us. She was like, your ability to be a Black person in white spaces, like that is the greatest unpaid skill that you will develop in this space. And because you are developing this so young, it will allow you to go so much further in life. And I remember her saying this to me and me being like, oh shit, like, you know, this is some real shit, right? Like, oh, like, you know, like no one wants to hear, you're just like, oh wow, like, you know, that's deep and also sad. But she wasn't wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, white people do fucked up shit all the time. It's nothing new. It is nothing new. And so, again, it disappoints me. It makes me sad, but it does not shock me. It does not hurt me. Like the fucking guy with the letters, I just threw that shit out and went out with my business. But what will not stop shocking me, it will never stop shocking me and being painful to me, are the ways in which other BIPOC people police and invalidate each other. Like, it's one thing if the person, and I know, you can come for me for this, but like, I stand 10 toes down on this, like, because it's just so clear. It's one thing if the person is like a Clarence Thomas, where I know in my gut, the same way I knew about that boy writing the letters, I know in my gut, this man could not give a flying fuck about Black culture or Black people as a collective, because it is so clear in the things that he supports and that he votes for. I know he says nigga with a hard R and is happy to be not like us. okay? And I'm not trying to invalidate his blackness. He is a black man, but he is a black man that I know does not give a fuck about black people, okay? But again, I think that for a lot of people, it's not them intentionally trying to distance themselves from their culture. It is that America is deeply anti-black and the system is working, okay? The system works. Just look at the last election. The system works. And I just wish that collectively we had a little more grace for each other. You know, how you choose to deal with those outside of black culture is your own business. But as a black woman speaking to other black people, I really wish that we could find a way to give each other more grace for the ways in which we are different, because we are different. And like, that's the thing that's crazy to me, is that I felt like, so for instance, I wanted to work on a video when I was there, like very early on, that was kind of like examining the stigma behind, like, you know, I don't sound black, right? And these people that I mentioned earlier, they wanted to shut that shit down because they were just like, oh, we don't really feel like this adds anything meaningful to dialogues around blackness and blah, blah, whatever bullshit they said. But then these same people went and did a video that was like, oh, what it feels like to be called the N-word by white people. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, but I feel like that video added nothing to the conversation, because we all, like, what black person is going to say, oh yeah, I fucking love it when white people call me nigga? Like, there was nothing that video could have ever been other than, I hate this and this is uncomfortable. Like, there was never going to be any nuance in that video, because again, because I knew, one, that they would never, because it's just like, it's not a word that we're like, yeah, like, it's not a word to be debated about whether or not you like it or you don't like it if white people call you it. Like, hands down, the message is always going to be, don't fucking say it. So anyway, this is my trauma coming out. So let me move on. This is my trauma. I told you, it's still in there. So, you know, for this episode, I originally wanted to have this discussion with a black therapist so that we could talk about tangible strategies that BIPOC people could take away on how to deal with their anxiety that they are not black enough, or how to approach reframing what matters when it comes to making friends. And I still want to do that, which is why this episode has now become a part 1. But while Becky and I were searching for someone to sit down with me, it became very clear that a lot of the people that we reached out to did not want to touch the topic. And while that was sad for me, there was also another part of me that was like, well, you know what? I'm sure these people that are saying no or they're not responding might also be like, you know, why I gotta do the heavy ass, potentially polarizing topic? Like, why can't I just talk about boundaries or intimacy or something lighter and fluffier, you know? Now, again, I have no idea if that's how they actually feel. They could have been busy. But again, it was a moment for me to have grace and understanding. And yeah, I would love nothing more than to feature Black people talking about universal things. So it's something I want to be mindful of when I'm casting for future episodes. But all of this is to say that, you know, we get to choose the stories that we tell ourselves when things happen to us. Like, the facts of this situation is that the people said no, or they just didn't respond. But how I interpret that is on me. And I just hope that we can find more ways to tell ourselves better stories instead of dividing ourselves. Like, instead of saying, you don't have any Black friends, so you're not Black enough, like, why not say, I don't know, something. Anything else would be better than that. All right. So that's all I got for this episode. If you have thoughts, feelings, or revelations that you want to share, or you have questions or things that you want to add, make sure you leave us a comment wherever you are listening. You can also screenshot the episode and tag me on social media with your thoughts, or you can join the Real Talk Friend Therapy Facebook group and our Patreon to engage with us there. But the last thing I want to leave you with is a story from college. It was my sophomore year, and I was vice president of our Black student group. I went to a small women's college, and my freshman year, God, this is how small my school was. But my freshman year was the largest class of Black women they had ever had in their 100-year history. And that number was 14, okay? 14 out of 200 people. So it's this monumental year, and admissions is shouting this progress to the rooftops, right? They're patting their shoulders real hard, we fucking did that. Well, then sophomore year comes. And in our student group, we had this tradition of giving freshmen, sophomore mentees that they could connect with and help with their transition and just kind of be like a big sister figure. And, we all knew that something was off when admissions was being real secretive about the number of girls to expect at orientation. Like, I want to say in the past, we had gotten this number in like May or June after, the class had been fully recruited. And I want to say they told us at orientation that year, which was in August. So, y'all want to know how many girls we got that year? Take a guess. Take a good guess, okay? We got 4. And again, this was 4 out of 200 plus people. And then, just because someone checks off a box saying that they're Black, it does not automatically mean that they want to engage with the Black student community. And honestly, I have no judgment on that. Clearly, as y'all saw with me in grad school, you got to do what you got to do. But obviously, we had a ton more sophomore mentors, and they were devastated. Now, I was not at the booth when this interaction happened, but so at the school, we had a student resources fair where first-year students could come up on their own and learn about clubs and meet the leadership team and yada, yada, yada. And I happened to step away from the booth, but when I came back, one of the sophomore mentors who had been watching the booth was crying. Like, homegirl was crying real hard, like maybe like a step or two away from sobbing, all right? And I'm like, y'all, like, what the fuck happened? I was gone for like 5 minutes. And someone explained to me that the girl's mentee basically opted out of being part of the group. And so, again, she was devastated by it. And, I get why she was sad. I totally get it. Like, we all had these expectations that we were going to be these support people and, rejection is tough. But it's also part of life. Anyway, even if someone opts out of the group, it's still tradition for us to bring all the students who identified as Black a welcome basket and to let them know that we'll always be there for them if they need us, that, this isn't a you need to join now or never, that they can engage with us at any time in their college career. So I'm there when we deliver the welcome baskets to the girl, and y'all, I swear to you, this girl, she looked so happy and grateful and excited to see us. And then every year the college would throw a Women of Color dinner. And so we also just reminded her that the Women of Color dinner was on this day. And she was like, oh yeah, like, I'm gonna be there. And she was there. So, again, my gut was just like, girl, something's not right. Something's wrong here. Something's not making sense. The math's not mathing. And so at that point, I decided that instead of just going with what everyone is saying to me, I just need to sit down with this girl and get her side of what happened. So I reach out to the girl and I'm like, can we just have a little chat? I wasn't there and I want to get some more insight as to what happened. And I want your POV. So she let me know that she grew up in a very diverse school system. I believe she grew up in DC, and she had never been part of a Black student group before because they didn't have them at her school. So when it was presented to her, she said that, she's like, I opted out because I didn't think I needed it. But now, because we were probably about 2 weeks past that incident. And, she was like, so I've been here for 2 weeks. And she's like, oh, now I understand why the space is there. And, she actually did have interest in wanting to come, but that she felt that she had ruined her chance because of the mentor's reaction and, the feeling of like she had created bad blood. And I hold this story really dear to me as a reason as to why grace is so important. Because while I did encourage that girl to still come to our meetings and I tried to help give her a fresh start, I could just tell when she came that she still felt like she had tainted her ability to be accepted. And so eventually she stopped coming. And listen, I hope, this is not me saying that this was the mentor's fault for showing her feelings. Like, I get it. I get why homegirl was crying. It was devastating that we only had 4 Black girls. I was sad too. I had prepared to be this mentor and to have this nurturing relationship, and it didn't come to fruition. But I hold on to this story because if everyone had just given each other a little bit more grace and understanding, if the mentor maybe hadn't put so much pressure on this rejection, because I almost feel like she took the rejection personally, you know? And it's like, if we just all put a little less pressure on the situation, it wouldn't have had to be this way. We could have offered community to someone who eventually realized that they needed it. And instead, we created one more person who was anxious about being in Black spaces. So if you don't have any friends of your race, I don't think it has to mean anything more than what you want it to mean. Again, I'm currently in a season where I haven't been able to see my Black friends as much because I moved. It's funny though, because I will say the new area that I'm in actually has more Black and brown people, which I love. But you know, it's been a journey for me in terms of putting myself out there, because it's also a little more outwardly Republican. It's also like a lot of the people here are very family oriented, and you know, while I'm thinking about starting a family, it's just not, I just feel like everyone does shit with their kids. There's not, like, I was even looking for dance classes because I really want to get back into that, and I don't think they have any adult dance classes. And so I want more BIPOC connections that are closer to me, but I'm also not going to let the close relationships that I have with my 2 white friends at the moment mean anything more about my commitment to my culture. Like, we are in a loneliness epidemic, y'all. Like, get your friends where you can get your friends, okay? Woo! I cannot wait to talk to a therapist about all of this. I already know it's going to be such an enlightening experience, and I cannot wait to share with y'all. So make sure you are following all of the socials, that you are in all of the groups, and that you are subscribed to the podcast so that you do not miss it. All right, y'all. I hope you had an amazing end to Black History Month. I was trying to get this out before it was over, but I got some really difficult news that I will share with y'all once I've had time to process. But as we all know, every month is Black History Month. So publishing this in March just furthers that. That's what I'm saying to myself. All right, besties. I'll catch you later. Your girl is out. Loving Real Talk Friend Therapy? Of course you are. So don't forget to show us some love with a 5-star review wherever you are listening, and to join our Patreon to unlock bonus recordings, videos, private chats, and more.